All right, everybody. Let me have your attention here a little bit. We're going to get started. As always, we mix things up every once in a while and spin it up. I'm actually first up tonight. We're going to pray and share some prayer requests in just a few minutes. I'm going to begin tonight with kind of the segment we call Bridge to Truth, which basically gets us set up for the new series that will begin this coming Sunday. We just finished our series on the tabernacle last week. Hopefully, you survived the 6 weeks of that intact. If you were with us on Wednesday evening, I think we gave you some pretty decent stuff to supplement it, and some stuff that maybe you had never heard before or just had not heard a lot of times before, and maybe you were able to dig down into it a little bit deeper. If not, it's online. It's available. But this week we start a series called Extreme, and for us it effectively kicks off our summer. Okay, end of the school year is here for many of you. You know, Max is living, breathing graduate already. You know, he's out of captivity, free, employed. His father's happy. I mean, life is good. You know, life is good. Yeah, Max is overachieving, making us proud. But we're kind of rolling into summer mode, and there's a lot that happens here in the summer. And, you know, I used to think naively years ago that church would slow down in the summer. It doesn't. There's just a lot more moving pieces in the summer. And it has nothing to do with the fact that everybody's out of school, but it does in some ways, because that's when families will take vacations. With the kids out, it creates a freedom in the schedule. We start adding camps. We add youth camps. Kids are going to camps. Parents get a little strung out and stressed because they run out of stuff to do with their kids, and then they want to get them out of the house, and it's not time to get them out of the house yet. We move into summer fun night mode where we basically play a lot. This year we've added a 4th of July week, which is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about that. You do not want to miss a night. We are hitting everything that is America. Apple pie, hot dogs, ice cream, baseball, no fireworks, racing, worship. We're gonna take you back in history. I will leave it to you guys to figure out the fireworks on your own. Yeah, I'm out of the firework business, but I will watch Caden shoot off fireworks, and I'll just think to myself, this could go so wrong. But, you know, hey, you got to learn somehow, right? So don't burn yourself, kid. Of course, Caden's idea was, Dad, get out the flamethrower.
Build a steeple with gas. And then...
Nothing sounds like a better idea than breaking out the gas-powered flamethrower and starting fireworks in the parking lot. There's something about that sounds like it could go catastrophically wrong, but we'll see. Anyway, all that said, so we begin summer mode this Sunday on a holiday weekend, and so hopefully you'll be here. The series is called Extreme, so for this week, next week, and the following week as we wrap up this rotation of midweek, I'm going to do what we're going to call Beyond Extreme, where I'm going to unpack a little bit more of what we're talking about. I have a gnawing feeling that if you listen closely to what I say Sunday, you will have questions come Wednesday, especially if you're trying to apply it to your life, okay? And so I wanted to use tonight to take a couple minutes, tell you where it comes from, tell you how we got here. Most of you know that as a side hustle, to entertain myself, I write. I write for Kentucky basketball, which is just fun because I just had to figure out a way to get paid to watch basketball games. And there's something very good about that. It makes me feel good about my life. But then on top of that, you know, I've written books, a series of Disney books, a lot of Disney books actually, and excited about that. They've gone well. They've sold well. Every time I think I'm done writing them, I'm not done writing them, and they've just gotten a fan base, and it's really opened up a lot of doors way outside of these walls for me that I never would have had. Give me an arena to speak in the lives of folks I never would have spoken into. As a matter of fact, I'm very excited. You can pray for me. Next week, the first children's book in the series will come out. And so a brand new kind of endeavor. And so we'll see how that looks and see if it's received at all. And there was a strategy behind it, and I had a publicist that was helping with that, and we designed that. So we'll see how that looks. But that was the first book I wrote was not a Disney book. The first book I wrote was this little beauty right here. Visible, Vibrant, Vital. Many of you, if you've been around me a long time, have a copy of this book somewhere. I wrote it 21 years ago now, but 20 years ago, wrote this book. And when I wrote it, well, I'll tell you about it in a minute. But I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And when it was said and done, I didn't realize I was going to light a fire that was going to send blowback my way. Because I just figured that if I wrote it, people would agree with it. and the problem wasn't here. The problem wasn't, at that time it was covenant. But the problem wasn't covenant people, because you guys were used to listening to me. It was people who weren't used to listening to me or had only listened to snippets online that got a hold of the book. And part of the reason that it blew back so much is that the Florida Baptist Convention got behind it a little bit and bought a massive amount of copies of the book and used it as a giveaway, as prizes, as things that they would give out at leadership events and things like that, which put it in the hands of a lot of my peers, pastors across the state, which is where the bulk of the blowback came. And so last year, toward the end of the year, a former employee from the Florida Baptist Convention took the time to contact me and said, Jeff, I just reread your book from 20 years ago. You remember it? Yeah, Visible, Vibrant, Vital. He said, when you finished it, he goes, last time I talked to you, you swore to me you would never write another book about church ministry. Because the response was so overwhelmingly ugly. And I said, that has not changed. I will stand by that statement. I'm much happier writing my Disney novels. They're fluff, they're fun, and the reaction is much better, and Disney fans are low-hanging fruit. They like to buy Disney stuff. You put a Disney brand on something, they buy it. And I'm like, that's ball game, right? And my children like that. That's an estate later on, down the road somewhere. That's all they're doing. So, but he said, I want to ask you 3 questions. I'm like, okay, here we go. I'm thinking to myself, what did I say in that book 20 years ago? What do I get ready to get asked about? These were the 3 questions he asked. Does Jeff Dixon still believe the things he wrote about church and ministry then, today? That's a good, decent question. He's a smart guy, though. Second question. Does Jeff Dixon still have the passion, the hunger, and the drive that he had 20 years ago about the call to be the church and the mission of the church? Again, another good question. I thought, okay, this is not going the way I thought. And the last one threw me. He said, has Jeff Dixon become civilized?
No.
and I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you, I chuckled when I heard the question, because it has, I was 43 years old when I wrote this book. Okay, 43 years old. I had to go back and do the math myself. How old was I? I've been pastoring the church we had started from scratch, Covenant Community Church, for 10 years at the time. And I remember my challenge for that 10th year was to write a book. I always wanted to write a book. That was my personal goal for the year. So this was the result of that. And so I tried to pour into these pages. And the type's little, so I poured a lot. This is not a large print book now, okay? This is not a large print book. I tried to pour everything that I believed or could think of about the church, about why the church does what it does, what church is supposed to be, why we as followers need to get it right if we're going to change the world. And so for me, it was in some ways a statement of ministry, okay, of passion, things that I needed, okay, to share. I didn't realize when I wrote it that it would be perceived by some as me taking shots at the organized church. In hindsight, it was, and I took a lot of shots, and I took a lot of probably painful shots, which is what caused a little bit of blowback. Fair enough. But my life verse has always been, since I can remember, is Acts 17:28. For in him we live, we move, and we have our being. That is my life verse. And I've been trying to live and flesh that out for longer than I can remember, because by his power, we live, we move, we exist. And so when I was in my 20s, I was convinced and convicted that the only plan that Jesus had put in place for the world to know him was the church. In other words, the church is God's A plan. And in my 20s, I was incredibly frustrated because I was young and I knew everything. And so I was very much in tune with what I believed was wrong with the church. And I felt like I'm called to do church differently. In my 20s, that really did drive me. That I will admit now, it probably consumed me much more than it should have. Okay. When I was in my 30s, I started fleshing that out, and it started kind of gelling, and my heart began to change. And the end result was that we started Campus Community Church on the UCF campus, and Covenant Community Church, which is a church that only meshed with First Baptist Winter Springs and is part of this journey. And I remember how old I was when we started that, because I was 33 years old, because I made the crack, well, they may crucify me when we're done. Okay? So I was 33 years old, so I can tell you exactly when that started. When we started, we were told we would fail. I mentioned a little bit of this at the 411 for 434 Sunday. We didn't know what we were doing. Now, that's what we were told. You're going to fail. You don't know what you're doing. We didn't know what we were doing. That was incredibly true. In hindsight, they were right. We didn't know what we were doing. But we did know what we were called to do, which made the difference. The struggle we were having, and the struggle we had in the early years, looking as I put them under the microscope now, is we just didn't know what church was supposed to look like exactly. We just knew what needed to be tweaked, but we weren't sure exactly what it was going to look like when we were done. And so we worked really hard at that, and we experimented. Some of you were part of those experiments and the failures along the way. But that was in my 30s. And by the time I got to my 40s, I wrote the book. And I wrote what I thought was the definitive book on church ministry right here. When it came out, among our tribe of Southern Baptists, I was branded as a mystic for some of the things I was saying. I was branded as a heretic for some of the things I was saying. And I firmly established myself as a Baptist bad boy, and found myself struggling to fit in to a group of people that I was trying really hard to respect. Even though I was considered by some to be a rebel, on the flip side of that, there was a certain group of leaders at the Florida Baptist Convention that thought I was a thought leader, that thought I was thinking outside the box, that thought I was still a shark among guppies, and that I had something to offer. That was the 40s. Well, then I got to my 50s. And see, we were supposed to have failed. We didn't. You guys believed in what we were doing. We were called to do it. We stayed with it. We kept working it. I don't know if we got better at it, but we kept doing it. And I don't know if we're better at it today, but we still could do it. And other churches have come and gone, and they have gone the way of the wind, and the trends have come and gone, and they've changed, and I've tried real hard to recognize the patterns that emerged from the trends from the churches that came and went, so we would not fall into those traps, and I think we've avoided those in some ways. But in preacher circles, I was considered an exception to the rule of how to do it. People didn't exactly know what we were doing, but we were having a level of success, slow, steady, transformational growth. And it seemed to be working. The conclusion was that they could not imitate it, simply because there was a calling that was unique in what we were doing, and it was important and it mattered. We as a ministry were still considered wildly radical, but we were survivors. And so we were accepted. Well, then I got into my 60s. And I discovered among pastors that organized church still doesn't really know what to do with me as a pastor because they thought by now I would be gone. I mean, they figured I would be somebody else's problem by now. I would either be dead, retired, or something, and had no idea that we would still be doing this. And so when I went back to read the book, that's why I'm coming back to the book, I had not read it in 20 years. Hadn't read it in 20 years. There were some times I was writing, I'm like, who wrote this?
Because it was really good or really bad?
Yes.
At the same time.
Same reaction both times. This is really good. Oh, this really stinks. I remember and went back and I did something that I never do, is I went back and read some of the reviews that came in on the book from 20 years ago from people that I respected, like Leonard Sweet, who is a church futurist, who, that name doesn't mean anything to most of you, but some of you will know who Leonard Sweet is. Steve Brown, some of you do know that name, read the book and reacted to it. Ken Smith, who will be with us in a couple weeks, of course, read the book and reviewed it. But what I realized is that I still believe today what I wrote then. I still do. So after 20 years, my theology still runs down the same track. What it is today, though, is it is deeper, and there's a sense of urgency now that I didn't have then. In my 20s and 30s and early 40s, I think I ran out of frustration a lot. In my 50s and 60s, I'm discovering there's a sense of urgency because there's a clock ticking and we have to get it right. And so I think the other reason that there's a depth to it is because along the way we've fleshed it out in real life. And some of you have been on that journey. The ups, the downs, the good, the not so good, the ugly. We've taken a few dings on the way, taken a few surprises, but we're older, wiser, and it's more real now than it ever was before. And I see things clearer than I did. And so it was a good read. And so the answers to the questions that he asked were pretty simple. I mean, do I still believe what I wrote? The answer is yes. Do I have the passion, the hunger, and the drive that I had 20 years ago? I do. That's why this year you saw those initials show up. You've heard me mention them a few times. You're going to continue hearing them. You need to get a PhD. You need to be passionate. You need to be hungry, and you need to be driven. That's where that has come from. All of that has come from this going back in time and kind of looking a little bit. The last question, has Jeff Dixon become civilized? Bothers me because there's nothing civilized about the call of Christ. And I told him on the phone, and I tell you now, Lord, I hope I haven't. I still want to be as extreme as always. Because Jesus did not endure what he endured on the cross, the brutality of it, the pain of it, the heartache of it, so we would be nice people in a namby-pamby, milquetoast world. He called us to be extreme and to follow him because we are the A-plan still to change the world. And there's nothing nice about that because the world doesn't want to hear truth. And we are called to be extremes. And we live in a day and age where church has become nothing but a marketing gimmick. We look for these trends and the fads. And if the trends and the fads are good, we'll start a church, we'll build around it. That's what everybody wants. That's what everybody wants to do. They want to use their focus groups. And I got news for you. They have crawled out of the pit of hell and infested our churches. And so the more I dug and the more I prayed and the more I messed around with this idea, the sermon series you're about to hear has emerged. And the title is Extreme. And so we're going to talk about the extreme call, the extreme invasion this week, the extreme tribe. And we're going to talk about things that you may have not heard me say if you've been around me a long time, for 20 years. And the closest thing you will have heard to anything that I'm going to say is if some of you said in the Bible study, a Sunrise Bible study 3 years ago called Last Blood. Some of the ideas I threw out there. I throwed them hard. I threw those ideas out. Some of those ideas were very much a part of the background work I did for this study. So that study starts Sunday. So pray for me. We're starting on a holiday weekend on purpose. I know we're going to have people moving in and out of town. I know it's not the best weekend to start a big series, but it is a big series. It is a pivotal series for us in ministry. We will look back, I promise you, at the end of the series, and we will be turning things that we're doing based upon this series. And they will change and tweak the trajectory of our ministry in the days ahead. So please pray for me. Be here. Be a part of it. Look forward to it. The answer to the other question is no, you can't get a copy of the book. It is out of print. Is there a plan to re-release it? Nope, there's not a plan to re-release it. I'm not planning on re-releasing it.
Boxes of them around here somewhere?
Probably a few.
They were at Pinecrest.
They were at Pinecrest. They got ruined. I think most of the copies ended up at the Florida Baptist Convention because the last part of that story is simply the blowback was so strong they had to quit giving them out. They had to quit giving them out, and so not because again, I didn't think there was anything radical about the book, but I guess it was. So beyond extremes, so that we're unpacking it. That's where we start. That's what we start Sunday morning.